I take a motion to approve the agenda?
Madam President, I'd like to make a motion to approve the agenda as presented with the following amendments. Additional certified and classified personnel actions for consideration, item E-3.
Motion to approve the agenda with an amendment. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Second by Janine. Any discussion? Since we're all here, do you want to just do show of hands?
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. We do have one public comment. John Weesey, if you'd like to come to the podium and have your 5 minutes.
Thank you. I would just like to have a little conversation about masks. In November, or actually in the beginning of the school, we started with masks, and masks did not prevent us to go into level 6, and masks are not the reason that we're down to where we're at today. I reviewed the gating criteria. I've looked at Finney County, and I apologize for not being here sooner. I had some prior commitments, but through the whole month of February and even currently, based on the numbers set forth by the district and what I'm reading and what I'm seeing is we should be at a minimum of level 2, possibly level 1, and we shouldn't be requiring masks in school. So just wanted to have a little conversation about that. Currently today, I just checked before we came, we have 0 in the hospital, 12% positivity rate, and 51 active cases in the county. So I'd just like to have some discussion as to why we're still at 3.5, why we're still requiring masks. We do still have an online option for any parent that isn't comfortable sending their students to school if masks get removed. Just don't understand why we're still requiring our students to wear masks based on the criteria set forth by you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Weesey. Dr. Farland, can you follow up with Mr. Weesey at a later time with regard to his questions, maybe?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Just to kind of explain, during public comments, we don't really engage in a discussion, but Dr. Farland can follow up with you. Okay, at this time, we have a building presentation from Alta Brown.
For our presentation for Alta Brown, we decided because of the possibility of going Zoom that we were going to do a video. So we have interviewed some students and a couple of teachers and put together a video to showcase our school. So I will share my screen here. Hopefully the sound is loud enough. All right, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Okay, very good. All right, here we go. Enjoy.
Hi, I'm Caitlin Coker, principal of Alta Brown Elementary. Tonight's the Board of Education meeting. We will be presenting a video where we interview some staff and students to tell you about all the wonderful things going on in our school. So we hope you enjoy.
My name is Ben. My name is
is where we do the base every Tuesday evening. And what we do is take students' deposits. So, like, what we do is we exchange them money for leave. They can get like a prize or something. And here, every time a student makes a deposit, we put their name here in the draw. And like at the end of the year, we would draw out a name and you like, so they can like win a prize. So like there's a prize that the students can get when they earn enough money. Okay. So I've been part of our student council here in our school for 2 years now. And one of the things we do, is recycling. And what we do is we have to sort what we have in these buckets. These buckets are from each classroom. And we have to take the stuff that it has inside and put it where it's supposed to go. Like the white paper that we have. We would also be doing other stuff, like year round, maybe like doing some activities for the school or setting up some. Who's your teacher? What grade are you in? And what school do you go to? What is your favorite thing to do at school? What do you love about Epic? What is your second favorite thing to do at school? What kind of work do you like to do? What's your favorite subject? Math. Thank you, Deacon, for your time. My name is Erin. I've been here in this school for 3 years. My favorite subject is math. And I think the school has changed a lot since COVID-19 because everyone has to wear masks, and I like that everyone has an iPad so they can do their work on it. Hi, my name is Vicky, and one of these things that I like about the school is we have stuff around us, and technically what a around us is just a few classes going around, and it's a champion, like so many things, and if you win, you get a trophy, and this is the trophy. I like math because it can help with a lot of things in life. Everything about
Hi, I'm Mr. Valerio, I'm the PE teacher here at Alton Brown. This year, due to the COVID restrictions, we are currently doing units every 2 weeks. That way I don't share equipment between classes, and at the end of the 2 weeks, I sanitize it, and I can switch over to another class after the weekend.
And what's behind your tiara? Do you ever get to play on the rock wall? Okay. Very good.
Hello, I'm Rita Corral, and next of all, off the ground is my home of sight. Well, my sister is on a holiday on foundation number 1. Yeah, my sister is here. And my sister is here. I leveled up to Kenneth? Who's your teacher? Very nice. What's your favorite thing to do at school? What else do you love to do at Alta Brown? Thank you for sharing, Kenneth. Have a great day.
Hi, I'm Christina, and I go to school at Alta Brown. I'm in first grade. My favorite subject is reading and math because it's fun to learn about it. And the guidance.
I'm Mrs. Rousseau.
I'm Olivia. I'm Dila.
And we go to Alta Brown. We love Alta Brown because
I love Alta Brown because I love sports. I like Alta Brown because I love my teacher.
we love Alta Brown because everyone works together as a team.
My name is Nancy. I am a second grader now. It's an international class. I like to introduce my class. It's a word and name. S for S, I have to remember to add ES.
Hi everyone, my name is Mrs. Giesemann and this is my daughter. What's your name? Julie. Julie, good job. So for most families this year, obviously with COVID and everything, it has been very difficult to try to be involved and be in attendance at school. But luckily, since I teach here and Julie attends school here, and the school we attend is say Alta Brown. Yay, go Dragons! Bye! 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 Bye!
All right, so that is Alta Brown, for the 2021 school year. And at this time, if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
That was a great video. Thank you for sharing. Any questions?
I know I'm gonna feel dumb when I ask, but can you remind me what epic is? One of the students said his favorite thing was epic.
So Epic is it's an app where they have a lot of different choices and books that they can read.
I knew I'd heard it, but I couldn't remember what it was. Okay, thank you. Right, it's the books, because when we were talking about the library. Thank you. And thank you for having recycling at your school.
You bet.
Mark, you had a question?
Yeah, who is your partner on the credit union again?
So we work through Golden Plains Credit Union, and then the name of our branch is Golden Dragon Credit Union.
Very good, thank you.
And our fourth graders are the ones that they go through the application process at the beginning of the year. They fill out an application, and then we choose our workers from there. So.
Well, I have to admit, I missed having your class at the courthouse this year. That was fun last year, getting to have the trial of the century. We had the big bad wolf, the big bad wolf sued Curly the pig for searing his fur. So fortunately, the defense attorneys for Curly the pig were very successful in defending Curly the pig, and the jury found in favor, all three juries found in favor of Curly the pig. So, but I miss having them at the courthouse this year, so, but.
Yeah, the second grade, just for anybody who's interested, our second grade always does a field trip downtown, and they stop at the courthouse and the fire station, the police station, and all that is one of their field trips that they take, so.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so much. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have any correspondence, Stephanie? And that takes us to the consent agenda.
Madam President, I need to recuse myself to the conflict of interest with the agenda.
Thank you, Alex.
Madam President, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
There is a motion to approve the consent agenda. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Discussion.
What's your question?
We just had the one bid on the buses, is that correct?
Yes, if you remember, last meeting, we rejected all bids for buses because we tried to get bids on some used buses, and that didn't materialize, so we resent it out. This time, this is what we got back,
Brand new buses.
brand new buses.
Yeah. We just got the one, and so, okay. Thank you, I just wanted to clarify that.
Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed? Motion carries. Do you let Alex and you can come up in? Or I guess we could leave them out there
That's
for a
what I
while. That takes us to curriculum reports, and the first one up, I believe, is Jenny Hans. Ms. Hans? And we can see your screen.
It would help if you could hear me.
We can hear you, but now we can't see your screen.
Yes, I couldn't unmute until I stopped. There we go. Okay. Good evening. Tonight I'm just here to update you on what we're doing doing with career and technical education. I will say, I thought, with a unique school year, maybe we should just step back and just make sure everything we put into place is going well and will work well, but we can't stop making opportunities for kids. So we have more things going on. So I wanted to tell you, new this year that we have students currently in, I updated you on last year, that were things we were working on, was carpentry. We have 3 GCHS students who are going to Garden City Community College every day after their 5th-hour class for carpentry. And they will be done with the program at the end of the school year with a certificate ready to go to work on a construction site. We have 4 GCHS students in the manicuring program, and at the end of the school year, provided that they are 18 years old and they take and pass an assessment at the state, they will be ready to be a licensed manicurist. So we have 4 students ready for that. And then we also have the automotive program going at the Alternate Education Center. And I'm sorry, I don't know how many students are enrolled in that at the moment. But that's what we have going on. They're going really well. But we couldn't just stop there. So next year, we have emergency medical responders starting with the community college, as well as a program for industrial machine mechanic. I should clarify, the emergency medical responder, they will receive their EMR certification at the end of the school year. Industrial machine mechanic, they will get 12 college credits, but that does not complete the degree, but does give them a very good start. And the college is starting a new computer support specialist degree program, and through that we're going to be offering the computer programming as a dual credit option. And the automotive class at the Alternate Center will now open to our GCHS students to go over. That's also in partnership with Holcomb School District. They will be able to send their students as well. And that's my next point on my next slide, sorry. So automotive will be open to students from area schools. That's how we're partnering with other districts. We're also still developing our countywide advisory councils. The team that's been working on those has paused due to COVID-19, and advisory councils this year went to email or Zoom, so we did not pursue the countywide advisory councils, but that's still something we're working on. I think that our community would appreciate only being asked to come to one meeting instead of going to one for USD-457 and one for Holcomb and one for the community college. So we're hoping to put all of those meetings together for all 3 entities can count the same meeting so that we don't put such a strain on our community to be at all 3. And then we still operate under Perkins 5. We talked a lot about Perkins 5 last year. We wrote Perkins 5 last year. It was approved. And so this is our first year of operating in Perkins 5, which includes all of those schools listed in our area. We all had to work together to create that. And our data all comes together at the end of the year. So this is our first year of a 4-year cycle for Perkins 5. And our partnerships with industry, we are hosting weekly career chats in the Career Center. Haley Armstrong has done a great job of setting those up, and you'll hear from her later today. We've also been having classroom speakers via Zoom. Our teachers have been great at still reaching out and still doing what they can to still get industry represented in their classroom. And then actually tomorrow, Empirical is going to be coming to talk to our students tomorrow and Wednesday. Tomorrow they're going to talk to 2 classrooms, and they're going to present in the cafeteria to students, and then they will be available for students to sign up and speak with them in the Career Center on Wednesday. One thing that we did that was due today was the CTE
Scholar. It was a new program by the state last year, and we did not participate last year, but decided to participate this year. It's to recognize students who are successful in career and technical education. So it's for senior students, and I should say before I read this, it is extremely difficult. It is for senior students who have earned or are presently enrolled in 3 or more career and technical education credits with documentation of technical skill attainment. They have to have a GPA of 3.5 or better in all of their CTE coursework. They need they need to have civic engagement, which means leading a group that made a change in their community or state or nation, or 100 hours of outstanding community service with a verification letter, and they need 80 hours of workplace experience, and they have to write an essay. So I'm excited to announce that we had 5 students apply today for the CTE Scholar. So that will go to the state, and they will decide if they earned that distinction. If we do have students who earned it, I definitely plan to bring them to a board meeting so that you can congratulate them. It really is a very challenging application, and they have to do a lot of work to get the application ready, and just all of the work involved in what the requirements are. So I'm really excited to see if any of those 5 students earn the award. And I am certainly excited to bring them to a board meeting if they do. And we had 160 seniors who met the academic requirements. So we had 160 seniors that had 3 or more career and tech ed credits with a 3.5 or better GPA, which is 54% of our senior class. So I'm really excited about those numbers. We have a lot of kids involved in career and technical education. The other thing that I would just like to tell you is about a student who came in to talk to me about the award. We sent a letter to all 160 seniors who met the requirements, telling them, you meet the requirement, the first requirement, you check if you meet the rest. And I had a student come in and ask me about it. And I looked at her transcript, and she had a 4.0 in CTE and not a 4.0 in her academic classes. And I just reminded her this is an award, not a scholarship, making sure she knew that. And she just said, I know, and I'm so excited. I've always wanted an award. And I thought that was the cutest thing. But it just helps me to understand that this program really is important to recognize our students who are succeeding academically in career and technical education, where they might not be getting that award in their other classes. But career and tech ed is somewhere where they can shine. So I'm excited that we have an opportunity to recognize those students. And I hope she gets the award. And then I'm not going to read it to you. I just wanted to let you know that each one of our 17 pathways all do have certificates that students can earn. And so I went ahead and listed them out here. There are 3 slides of these. You can get a hold of my presentation later and read them if you want to. They're all industry standard certifications that students would need if they were working in the field. Some of them are more advanced than others, and that's one of my goals this year is to work on finding, for some, for example, Adobe Photoshop is a very, very, very difficult certificate to earn, whereas some of the other ones don't take as much effort and studying and time. So looking for something that can be a little more equitable for the Photoshop and graphic design students rather than as compared to, for example, the students who get the first aid certification. First aid is very important. Photoshop is just difficult. All of the Adobe certifications are very difficult. So looking for industry standard certifications that could replace those. Again, here's a few more. Another goal of mine is to have a dual credit option in each one of the pathways that we offer. So I just wanted to give you an update of where we are with that right now.
You can see on the right, those are all of the pathways that we do have dual credit opportunities in, and those are all with Garden City Community College. They all have at least one dual credit option. On the left, though, the pathways with no dual credit opportunities currently, we have fashion, apparel, and interior design, graphic design, engineering and applied mathematics, and restaurant and event management. And all of those are programs that the community college doesn't have a degree program that aligns. So we need to look outside of Garden City Community College. And I did put a little star on engineering and applied mathematics. I am exploring a potential option through Wichita State Tech, and actually talked with them today, got a lot of questions answered. So I hope in the future that you will have the opportunity to vote for us to be able to offer dual credit for our robotics course. That will be through USD-457 and will be free to our students. So I hope that is something that you will see soon. And so, as I said, we currently have 17 pathways that we offer, and here is that list. We really do cover the majority of the career clusters. The only one we're missing is we don't have any pathways in the transportation, distribution, and logistics career cluster. But we have at least one pathway in all of the other career clusters. So I wanted to talk to you a little bit about where our opportunities for growth are. We are 7th in the state as far as the number of pathways that we offer, mostly behind schools in Wichita and Kansas City, who offer up to about 26. There's one school that reports 42, and I think that they have an error because I don't think anyone has 42 pathways. So I would say we're 6th or 7th, depending on what their real number is. So anyway, I just wanted to talk about just the different opportunities that we have. I'd say our lowest hanging fruit is adding a pathway in biochemistry. We currently, if you noticed in our last slide, we currently teach biomedical. It's almost the same. So we currently teach all of the required courses. And the reason why we haven't moved forward on that, though, is because we likely would have the same amount of kids interested in biomedical as we would biochemistry, and so we really just be taking, spreading our numbers out across pathways rather than having one strong pathway. And so we haven't moved forward in that. It's something that we definitely could look into doing. I just don't exactly see that, it might be low-hanging fruit, but I'm not sure that that fruit tastes very good. Low-hanging fruit is a pathway in travel and tourism. We would only need to add a half credit course, either Foundations of Travel and Tourism or Foundations of Hospitality and Lodging. However, when we look at our Zello data, the interest in the hospitality cluster ranks 10th out of 16 of the clusters. Yet when we look in that, I believe that most of the students that are interested in that cluster are interested in the program that we already have, which is culinary and restaurant and event management. So I'd like to look further into whether our students would be interested. My other concern is that we don't have we're not really a travel destination. It's not a huge industry here, and so getting that workforce involvement in industry help might be a little challenging for what the pathway is actually laid out to entail. Continuing with my fruit in the tree, these are reachable fruits. So these pathways are pathways that we could offer if we added one credit. That might be 1 or 2 classes, just depending on how it's laid out. And I put them in the order of student interest, so that you can see there. So family, community, and consumer services would be first. Construction and design would be second. Business management and entrepreneurship would be third. Agribusiness systems would be fourth. You might be noticing, oh, we don't teach agribusiness systems. No, but we teach comprehensive agriculture science, which are very similar and have a lot of similar classes. And And that's the same with almost all of these. We have pathways that meet students' interests. And there's a lot of overlap. Number 5, biotechnology and agriculture. Number 6, natural resources and environmental systems. Number 7, programming and software development. Number 8, government and public administration. You'll notice cluster interest, that is the lowest, 16 out of 16, not where our students are interested, what our students are interested in doing. That's based on Zello, so it's just not, maybe they don't know what they're talking, what that actually means, but. Anyway, and then I said ladder required to get this through. It would take a lot of effort to add these. They would require 2 credits, which could mean up to 4 classes. And energy is 2.5, so that could be up to 5 classes that we need to offer. But again, in order of Zello interest, we actually have aviation production, number 1 there. Energy, number 2. Animal science, number 3. Food products and processing systems, number 4. Plant systems, number 5. Information support and services, number 6. Network systems, number 7. Aviation maintenance, number 8. And then mobile equipment maintenance has 2 different types. The first is automotive collision and second is automotive technology. And those are both at the bottom of the list. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we could go if we added pathways and kind of just the thought process of, how we'll be thinking about if we were to add one, where we would start. It's just kind of weighing student interest versus the teaching staff that we have, that, their expertise in the area, and how much time we can give in the master schedule to those classes. It's just weighing all of those things together. So, do you have any questions for me?
Yes, very good presentation, and unless I missed a communication, I don't know that we've got copies of your fruity slides, and so I'm wondering if we can get a hold of those. Do we have them?
Yeah, I added a little more after we sent it to you, and I can make sure that Amanda gets that and send that on.
Because obviously, again, it's just wonderful all the work that you have done, and particularly envisioning what the possibilities are, and that's brought out in your fruitful slides. And I think that's really helpful for the community to think in those terms as well. It's so on point, and I can't really begin to fathom all that comes together to try to figure out the overall scoreboard for how you fit in the number of options we provide our high schoolers, which was sort of your comment there, a number of things have to come together. But it's still exciting to see all your work and the work of the broader team, and then to see how you put together those possibilities, or that possibility thinking. And so I really appreciate that. I just want to comment on that and look forward to getting copies of those slides.
Yeah, I'll make sure to send them.
Thank you so much.
Dana? Jenny, on the Zello data with the student cluster interest, I just have a question about how the difference with that. I know it's funny because I was talking about that with my girls the other day, and they get matched up with certain careers, I'm guessing by surveys that ask them a series of questions. But do they also have an opportunity on Zello to express what their interest is, and then so what's the difference in that data, if that's possible? Does that make sense?
It does make sense. For this presentation, I used the data of what the students chose their interest to be, not what Zello matched them to be. Both of those are reports we can run. And Kaylee's presentation, and I assume Kelly and Mary are also involved in that.
that's coming after mine might address that a little more, the difference between the two, so I don't wanna, step on top of their presentation. I can definitely pull some data and email it to you, about just the difference in the students, how, Zello is doing this. It's called Matchmaker, how it's sharing or telling the students what it thinks they're interested in versus what the students click is being interested in. That's something I can definitely pull, and send on to you.
You don't need.
I haven't actually looked into that too much as to whether or not there's a discrepancy or not, but I can definitely find out.
You don't have to send that to me, Jenny. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to assume that that happens. But I mean, I assume that they probably had two separate ways of collecting the interest and matching. Otherwise, or maybe my daughter would choose to be a foreigner on her own. I don't know. She's pretty unique. So I was just double checking. You don't have to pull that for me though. Thank you. Oh, I did have one other question though.
Okay.
So you mentioned a possible dual credit partnership with WSU. Is that right? Was it WSU that you said?
Yes, that's WSU Tech.
Tech. Okay, thank you. And how easy or like how often are we reaching out to other colleges or even community colleges in our region with some of these dual credit or dual programs?
My first goal in getting our dual credit options was to do as much as possible with Garden City Community College, because they are our local college and most of our students go there, or many of our students go there after high school. So having it aligned with their program is number one for me and priority. But at this point, as far as meeting my goal of getting at least one dual credit option for each pathway, we have done that for everything they're able to offer. So this is really the first year that I've looked into working with any other schools. And the WSU Tech did kind of just fall into our laps. It's something WSU Tech was already working on. So it's a great opportunity. And as far as how often we'll be reaching out to other schools, I think it'll be a little more now. However, I still always want to hold our relationship with Garden City Community College at the highest level, because our partnership is so valuable. So I would not want to go to another college to offer something that Garden City Community College would be able to offer.
That's great. And I just didn't know if colleges actually reach out to you, or if that's something that you have to kind of go out and do that legwork.
It goes both ways. This one I was kind of looking for somewhere that could do any of these, and actually they reached out to our robotics teacher, and he brought the opportunity to me. So both. We just kind of missed our paths, but caught each other and connected. So again, I have a lot of questions about that got answered today. So I will be putting together some paperwork to go to Curriculum Council and then on to you.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ms. Hands? Thank you, Ms. Hands. Appreciate your time tonight. Appreciate it. Have a good night.
Thank you. Thanks, you too.
That takes us to individual plans of study with Ms. Armstrong, Ms. Pitts, and Ms. Guyman.
Mary, do you want to go first?
Okay. Hi, my name is Mary
I'm Kelly Pitts, I'm a school counselor at Kenneth Henderson Middle School.
And we will be discussing the individual segment study at the middle school level. And we're going to begin first by showing you this short clip. It will show you an introduction to Zello, and it will also show you some different features that Zello has.
Mary, can you turn your volume up? It's really, really quiet, really soft here.
I tried, but it, see. Ellie, do you want to try it on your end?
Sure, if you want to end yours, and then I'll share my screen.
Okay.
Is that louder?
We can't see no screen.
Oh, okay. Let me try Zoom again.
I'm gonna show it for you by,
Okay, that was,
all right, let me do that. We may just not be able to show the video, because it's not giving an active link for me.
If you, start the slideshow, it might.
Yeah.
Zello helps students build a roadmap to a successful future using a variety of time-consuming methods. Let's start with first.
link does work for us, so we could go back and watch it.
Yeah, the link should work in your agendas, so if you, sorry to give you homework, but if you wanna, go through those demonstrations on your own, that might be better. It started out really good there, Reminder, but then it got quiet again.
Okay, we can move forward. So counselors and teachers meet with students throughout the school year to work on their individual plan of study, their IPS, both classroom and mentoring time is utilized.
So counselors have developed criteria for students to follow in the 7th and 8th grade years. And so during middle school year, students, they are exploring different careers. In 7th grade, they take the learning styles assessment, and this will identify what students' learning styles are, whether they are visual learners, tactile learners, or auditory learners. And they may be a combination of all three of those, one or more. And then they also take the matchmaker, and the matchmaker is an assessment for 7th graders that we do in 7th grade. They will answer questions about their interests, and the matchmaker takes their answers and matches them with a list of careers that students will then explore, learn about. If they're interested in those careers, they save them to their plan, and they do that just simply by clicking a heart. It tells them that their career is saved. And they can review that information later on and change it as they go. And then in 8th grade, students will take the personality style assessment, and this will ask them questions about their personality, and then it will show them how their personality fits in with the careers that they are interested in. And then at the end of 8th grade, at the end of their IPS, when they're working on it, they will take the mission complete assessment, and that will just basically review or activity. I don't know if it's really assessment, but it's an activity that helps them review all the information they've learned through Zello during 7th and 8th grade. For career and educational planning, in 7th grade, we introduce students, we go into the classroom, counselors do, and we introduce to them the IPS, what it is, and how Zello meets the requirements for it. And then in 8th grade, we review that information with students. For career-related activities for both 7th and 8th grade, we have a career fair at both middle schools. We do this every other year. Unfortunately, because of COVID, we weren't able to do that last year or this year, but next year we definitely plan to begin that again. And then the lessons that students complete in 7th grade are the learning styles lesson, the discovery learning pathways, biases and career choices, and then defining success. And in 8th grade, students will learn about skills. They'll take the Explore Career Matches lesson, transition to high school, and self-advocacy.
Parent involvement in the fall and spring due to COVID restrictions. Parents weren't in the building, and so parents were notified about Zello via email during parent-teacher conference time. And then next year, Zello will have a parent portal, and we're excited about this, for parents to access their students' IPS information. And then students will present their IPS to their parents during mentoring. These meetings can be virtual or in person.
So for data collection, at the end of the first semester, counselors are monitoring students' IPS progress. And then during second semester, we're ensuring that 100% of students will complete their IPS portfolio. And that sometimes that may just be asking their mentoring teachers to make sure they complete whatever lessons they have left to complete. And then sometimes we call them in to the counseling area and have them complete their lessons there.
Successes this school year. Students are now one-on-one with their IPAS at the middle school level. So this has allowed students to use mentoring time to work on their IPS, which has reduced the loss of classroom time. And then the remote students were given a Zello video presentation by counselors, and this was shared by their remote teachers. And then the remote teachers are having students work on their Zello lessons during the mentoring Zoom session.
ideas for the future include having students present their IPS during mentoring. They could invite their parents to come in to present to them, or they could do it through Zoom. And another option would be for students to do this during parent-teacher conferences, whatever works best for their parent schedule. And then, as Mary mentioned, we'll have the parent portal, and we'll provide information about that to parents during conferences, through email, through the Remind app. And we'll also have counselors be available at parent-teacher conferences to help parents log into Zello and to answer any questions they may have around Zello. And then we also plan to use social media to promote, which we've done some of that this year, and then to promote Zello. And staff will also be trained next year in Zello in the fall, and we'll give all teachers access to the Zello program. This year we opened it up, the options, if teachers wanted access. Since this is the first time we've used Zello in mentoring, we kind of let teachers decide. But next year we'll provide that access to all teachers, and we'll also have them facilitate the parent-student IPS meetings.
Any questions on the middle school portion? Thank you, ladies. Ms. Armstrong, do you want to go over the high school side? And then we may need to circle back as well with the middle school side after you speak as well. May lead to more questions.
Okay, everybody see my screen okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so I was gonna show you, Dana, what Jenny was talking about. So this would be a report of all the students in the high school. The purple, the suggested careers would be according to their matchmaker, and then these would be skills that were reported based on how they answered their questions about their skills, personality styles. And then when you go down here, you can see what stage careers. So these would be what students say that they are interested in, or their favorite careers that they say. And so she got the information from that area, as well as we have all kinds of information on there. The other thing I wanted to point out about the weekly career chat, Jenny gave me a compliment, but I can't take that because it was actually Tammy Wilson from Big Brothers Big Sisters. She arranges all of the community people that come in weekly for those career chats. Our struggle has been getting students to come in and visit with these awesome community members. So we're really struggling this year with getting students to engage. I think through COVID, they've become so isolated and maybe comfortable in that now they are not really engaging in the opportunities that we have for them. So that's been a struggle. The other thing I wanted to say was that I work literally 15 feet from Jenny, and I didn't even know some of that information that she presented, and it's so awesome. So the struggle is getting other people to know it. Of course, the counselors will tell the students during enrollment, but you know how then the students would communicate with parents. So how are we going to get parents and then the public to know all this awesome opportunities that we have for the students in CPE? So I think that's something everybody needs to kind of think about and gather some ideas on. So now I'll go on with my presentation. And I know you guys were all the same last year, and so I have no history lesson for you tonight, just a short little presentation. So the tool and the process together are the individual plans of study.
due to COVID restrictions such as our college planning conference, when we usually have 50 different schools in the gym, and we weren't able to host that this year. Same thing with FAFSA workshop, and even college application day looked a lot different, and so that affected the applications that we were able to help students submit. And so like I said before, students seem very withdrawn, and it's very hard to motivate them to participate in different opportunities that we have. Zello, all of our staff have accounts in Zello and can look up any student. So even their third hour students, they can see maybe they're struggling, and they can look that student up and say, oh, well, you know, their learning style is this, and I teach mostly in auditory or whatever, and try to differentiate their learning. Then they also, of course, we encourage them to create groups for their mentor students so that they can track the progress of their mentor students. We assign one lesson each month. That's what we've been doing this year. So students don't have to actually do it on that particular Wednesday. They can do it anytime in that month. We just wanted them to have kind of a timeline, so they weren't trying to like squeeze it all in February, but I do think a lot of people actually ended up doing it that way. As we return back to in-person school in September, we were focusing on a lot of social emotional topics. Suicide awareness was also in September, and so we had a lot of education about that. I also utilized the Kansas Youth Health Guide, and we talked about coping skills, self-care, and stress. And so then in October, we got rolling with different, with a Zello lesson, and all students were supposed to complete the skills lab summary. That was a new item that Zello had this year. So it's not just about their interest or their personality or their learning, but now they're also talking about their skills. Because maybe a student is interested in, say, art, but then they rate themselves very low on those skills. So maybe that's not a good career match. So I think that's important. And then in November, each grade had a couple different lessons to do. When we went to remote learning in December, we just had kind of a makeup month where students could work on anything they still needed to get done. And then in January, we had a new lesson, and I also gave information to teachers to go over with their students about service activities here in Garden City, how to log their service hours, where to look for service opportunities, and it would be good to put that into Zello as well. There's a category to put that in there, so they can keep track of that. But we also have a tool called Interview that they can use. I think that's important. That's one of the rubric squares that we're kind of low on for our school district, is involving community and service opportunities for our students. And then this month, students worked on their individual plan of study presentation, and they were encouraged to do that with their parents last week via Zoom with their teacher, or they could do it independently at home, and then the parent could sign a form stating that they viewed that IPS, and then the students were supposed to turn that back into their teacher. And then we will continue with some more lessons the rest of the school year. It is part of our college and career preparedness curriculum, and so we want to make sure that students are getting everything that could help them. So our completion rate so far, 36% of our students are all complete with their our school does very well in areas of like district planning, our curriculum, our resources that we have. We're very high in our pathways and our opportunities. We do have a difficulty with mapping out and planning the high school and post-secondary courses. That's also one of the rubric areas that Zello can do, but we've tried it in the past, and it's just really complex with all of the offerings. You know, we have over, hundreds and hundreds of courses, and so say, ROTC can count for 4 different credits. So it doesn't just go into one particular space on a student's, say, electronic credit check in Zello. The same thing like with English. We have honors English, we have regular English, we have special ed English, we have ESL English, and getting those all in was really just almost impossible. So we still need to try to think of maybe a way to do that without using Zello, getting students to make like a 4-year plan as far as what courses they want to take. But then the IPS rubric also wants us to map out post-secondary classes. So depending on what college a student's going to go into, what their major's going to be in, they want them to select classes. So that would be like an immeasurable amount of possibilities. It is, like I said, a struggle communicating about the IPS with parents more than twice a year. In the past few years, we've done it in the spring conferences, but they would like, the IPS rubric would like us to do it twice a year. So how would we fit that in, and how would we make that happen? I don't really think that students and families are fully invested in IPS or Zello and see its value. I think they kind of check it off because we say they have to do it. But it's awesome, the things that you can look up and find, and we even put all of our scholarships in there. Students can go directly to file their FAFSA through the Zello as well, college planning area. So it's just really great, and we just need students to use it more and families to get more used to it and refer to it more. So moving forward, I think we just need to gather and generate ideas to address some of those problem areas, possibly trying to incorporate Zello into like regular curricular areas. Maybe encourage CTE teachers to utilize Zello more in their classes. One of the lessons seniors will do is build a resume this spring, and it talks about how to get a job and things like that as well. We definitely need to promote community service and continue to foster relationships with different community organizations. I've contacted, or our secretary has contacted all the nonprofits in Garden City and asked for them to, give us any suggestions of what students could do for community service. So I think that's it. Does anybody have questions for me?
Any questions, Dan? I'm sorry if I'm yelling at you. I feel like I'm trying to go into the speaker, but, one of my questions is Zello offered in various languages?
No.
Does it have that capability, or is it just something we don't access?
It is offered in Spanish. It is offered in Spanish.
And we currently have that, like, running right now?
Yes, any student that would prefer to fill out the Zello information, they can do so in Spanish.
Awesome. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I would like to say that I've had, like, good conversations about some of the career stuff when my kids bring it up. But as a parent, it doesn't, like, it's not something that I, even as a board member, and I know that they are doing that, it's not something that I just ask them about. But when it did come up, it has some really good conversation. So, I'm gonna brainstorm because I think it does have a lot of value and like, there should be better parental involvement. I'm excited for that parent portal. That will be fun, I think.
Kind of going along those lines, I think it also depends on the kid too, because I've got one who was really into it and did a really good job and had a really good conversation using Zello. And I had another one who was like, oh, I was supposed to fill this out. And my conversation with that teacher lasted 5 minutes. So I think it also depends on who you have too, engaging with it. But it seems like I was really excited about it. And when we invested in it as well, like, we've had it for what, 2 years now, Dr. Carlin?
At least.
So,
Before Zello, it was called Career Cruising, and so we
yeah.
had it, 10 plus years or so.
And it was Career Cruising before, and was it the exact same and just changed its name to Zello, or was it two different platforms?
They changed the name and they improved it, and they add new things all the time, so.
Yeah.
I have a question. Do we know how many career options are available through Zello?
Yes, they sent me an email today answering one of my questions, and let's see here. $586 careers.
That's quite a few.
Mark, did you have a question?
Not really a question, I didn't really know where to bring it up now or in the board discussion, but this tool that the team has invested a lot into, we just sort of had a walkthrough on the rigor and the relevance, so to speak, of that tool for our high school kids. And when we talk about, and when we have a discussion, potentially, certainly the team has a discussion on how to get the word out and get people engaged in the tool. I mean, this is up there with athletic activities. You know, and I don't want to go there about which is more important, but certainly when someone goes on our website and we talk in terms of high school activities, that's one of the reasons we went to a single high school instead of 2 high schools, I think, was so the community could come around and support what we are doing with our young adults in getting them ready for career or college. And so as an outsider sort of listening to the update, I say it that way because there's been so much work into the implementation of this, it's obvious. But I don't know why we wouldn't have that on our website for the high school. And maybe we do, but right up there with our activities, because it is as important, if not more important, to the future of those young folks. And so when people touch base with USD-457 and our high school activities and even our middle school activities, you know, why wouldn't it be right up there promoted to help the mindset on social media that this is as important as the sports and the other activities. We're diverse in our activities. We're certainly diverse in our career paths and opportunities. How to get that out there is that conversation that we just heard is the ongoing question. And I don't know why that wouldn't be real apparent in our electronic face as well as our step into the high school. At one point in time, we had the Blue Ribbon High School, and that was what it was. But at the same time, it's a tremendous in this high school, not only in brick and mortar, but in our staff and our opportunities for our young folks. So how to get that message across ought to be evident physically, both online and at the schools. But that's easy to say. Again, it comes back to how do we do it, who's going to do it? But what we heard today is just fabulous. It's exciting to see how the teachers and the teams are working to make it more effective, and the counselors particularly. I don't mean to leave anybody out, the whole team. So that was just, I went on and I didn't mean to, but that's just what I'm thinking here as I listen to that is,
Like specifically with the Zello, or with both the CTE and presentation and with the individual?
well,
things?
Zello is the tool,
Okay.
and CTE is the pathways for the individual study. That, you know, it's a cultural and an educational environment, and how do you dovetail those two in there? I think our tools.
Yeah, they're very connected, because Zello does have, it focuses on the career clusters, which our pathways are in the career clusters, and that should be how students are choosing their electives, their academies. Our whole school is really designed around the career clusters, pathways, and Zello can work through all of those things.
That's the impression in your presentation that I got, and that is so exciting, because it seems to simplify what is a very complex playing field, for lack of a better term, and so it's exciting.
But I do have a question with that, because in the middle school, it's part of a curriculum in mentoring, correct? And it's somewhat, I mean, I know mentoring is pass-fail, but when I see Skyward grade, there is a grade. And when I read on the high school, it says students are asked to complete, but it's not a requirement, right? Or is it?
I think some teachers make it an assignment in their 5th hour class. Not all teachers do that. It has been stressed to teachers how important getting students to complete this is.
But they're
So
not,
I don't know all the tricks that they have been using to get the students to do it. I don't know.
but mentoring isn't a pass-fail or even, I mean, it's not graded and it's not pass-fail, right?
No.
At the high school.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Is the reason why I mentioned that, I remember, at least when I was paying more attention to the KH Facebook page, I saw things about Zello on Facebook occasionally, like something's coming up or something like that. So I know it's been on Facebook and their social media at one point, or it's at various increments. And then, I mean, I don't remember, and Ms. Armstrong, maybe you can correct me, I don't know if I've specifically seen it with Garden City High School's Facebook page, but I know that Ms. Hands has posted quite a bit about CTE things. So like the career chats that she mentioned, and other things that she's doing and opportunities that students have there. So that's why I was asking you for clarification about what you were asking about with social media. So, because, I mean, I've seen, you know, every Tuesday, the different people that are being invited for the career chat and things like that.
Well, some of my comments are just being sort of drawn into the, I guess, the obvious utility of
Right.
this, and recognizing how tough it is sometimes to get your young ones to engage,
Yeah.
and that can be personality driven as much as anything in their various significant relationships of and students, other fellow students. But it's just, I guess my comment was just getting drawn into the presentation itself and its utility. But I just wonder, it's not criticism by any means, it's just sort of cheerleading the initiative that possibility thinking and the obvious questions that were posed of, how do we continue to work to get the word out?
Yeah, I do all of the posting on the counselor's Facebook page. I do include Zello information in our monthly newsletter usually. And as far as like the college reps that come and the career chats and so forth, I always post those on both Facebook and Twitter. I send them in an email to students and parents. I send them in an email to teachers. I put them on our daily morning announcements that are read to the students, and then I have it on a sign outside of the career center. And so I feel like I've exhausted all of my communication pathways.
Well, is it regularly reviewed? Is it something reviewable on our continuing ed opportunities for our teachers, or embedded training? If that makes sense, I may not be using the right term, but when we have special times for teachers to continue put in
Oh, the
continuing ed time.
penalties?
Yes. Yeah, it's just, we ought to be continuing, and it seems like we are, continuing to find all the ways possible to, just like we want to improve our football team and that program and our other activities that we have with robotics and other groups. It's fabulous. We can only do so much, and it's sort of resource driven. But the tool here that we've elected to utilize is we want people to have, it would be ideal if we could have all team members and students to have that concept before them as often as possible. It seems to be their way to manage their individual educational experience.
I think one of the things that we've learned here is that we need to do a better job institutionalizing this tool as the center point of what people use at the high school. And we're, I think, prepared to make some changes to move that direction. Certainly communication's a part of it, but it's really got to become something that people recognize that's the place to go when they're having the conversations about what their interest might be, what classes they might sign up for, what life after post-secondary might look like when they want to explore options, and not necessarily just have to wait until that's an assignment and do that. And that won't happen overnight, but I think we recognize that, and that's one of the areas we need to do better in order to really fully utilize the power of the tool and really to help our kids, because it's about creating a post-secondary plan, whether that's four-year university or that's going straight to the workforce, and helping kids and parents understand options and what those things might look like. So
again, it's Jenny's presentation on, it's fabulous, the team that we have, and I know we've got awesome teachers that are out there, and so it's just kind of exciting, a series of presentations tonight, in my humble opinion.
Anything else? Thank you, ladies. Appreciate your time this evening. Great presentation and excellent work that you guys are doing for our kids. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And good
Thank
luck
you.
with everything that you're doing. Glenda, are you taking up the ESSER plan update?
I will as soon as Kaylee goes unshare their screen, I'll share mine.
Great.
And actually, this is going to be a team presentation. We did a lot of collaborating on this, so we're gonna let KJ start it out.
All right, so, everything I like to do is to talk about buckets. One of the things that we wanted to help explain is all the different buckets of funding, that are kind of coming to light, because of the pandemic. Some of them use similar names or different terminology, so we kind of wanted to clear it up for you a little bit. So the first round of funding that we received, some people call it CARES dollars, some people call it ESSER 1 funding. ESSER stands for Elementary and Secondary School Emergency Relief Fund. So obviously why we use these acronyms is it's a whole lot simpler. But the CARES or the ESSER 1 funding is money that we receive based on our Title I allocation. And originally the guidance that we were given on how it can be spent is anything that can be spent, that Title I fund money can be spent on, we can spend these dollars on. We could also use it to address anything related to COVID and address the concerns with PPE or sanitation items, technology for students, summer programs, after-school programs. And these dollars need to be spent by 2022. And we brought to you our ESSER funding recommendations towards the beginning of the school year, and we'll kind of talk a little bit about what those dollars are being spent on in one of the later slides, but that's kind of how this all got started, and the original bucket of funding that we received. Then the second phase went through, and ESSER 2 funding became available to us, and that funding can be spent on any of those things that ESSER 1 can be spent on, with a few additions. Obviously, they have become aware that with remote learning, there's probably going to be some loss in learning for students. And so how do we keep all students on grade level? We want us to spend the dollars there. We can also use it to address facilities, improvements that would help to reduce the transmission of the virus, which also would include projects which would address the indoor air quality, which we talked about in one of our previous meetings. That's why we are considering carving out some of those dollars for some of our HVAC systems to kind of help with that indoor air quality. And so those all have to be spent by 2023, and we are working right now on a plan of how we would recommend spending those dollars, and we'll bring that to you in a later meeting. And then there is considerable talk about an ESSER 3 funding. We don't have any final word on that yet, but if that funding does become available, our understanding is that it would be spent by 2024. So obviously, if we're looking at all these different buckets of funding and how we can spend them, we want to make sure that we're utilizing these dollars in a timely manner, but in an appropriate manner to address the needs of our students. So what did we do with the initial round of CARES money, and we also received some SPARK money from the county, so all these wonderful different sources we received. We've got them kind of listed some of there for you. Some of the staffing things that we did was we did add nurses and nurse paras so that we could have some additional support related to COVID. It included things like when we needed to do screenings when we first started school, we needed additional people to be able to take temperatures and ask questions and those things like that. We also had our after-school program for our elementary students. We continued that. We used to have KRR in a few schools, and when that funding went away, we were able to utilize these CARES or ESSER 1 dollars to put an after-school program in all of our elementaries. Technology, again, we Zoom and Remind, those are apps that we use continuously now because of the pandemic. And then just some strategies with Dreambox and Myon Reader, just trying to go remote with all of these options. I think as we heard earlier from the library presentation at Alton Brown, just various different programs that they're using to keep students engaged while we're on the remote path or not being able to be in person all the time. And then I think this next one just kind of clarifies a little bit more how these funds are distributed. And again, it's based on that Title I allocation. And our Title I funding is provided to us based on the number of at-risk students that we have. There's a little bit set aside for state level activities, and it talks in here about only 0.5% of the total state aid may be used for administration activities. However, I can tell you, we won't use any of ours for administration activities. All of our dollars will be spent, for something other than administration. So that's not anything that we will use any of these extra dollars for.
We met with the principals and talked about what appropriate goals would be and what were the categories of needs that they were seeing in schools. We definitely want students to be able to master grade level skills at the appropriate level. So this could be scaffolding for our students with special needs or our English language learners. But overall, the principals identified time, more time with the kids, the people to do the interventions and implement the strategies, and then the strategies that will work with the kids. Where are our kids? This was our fall and winter fast bridge data from this year. The blue is at grade level and the red is below grade level in reading. For reading, this is pre-K through 11 data, 11th grade data. And just noting that, like KJ said, trying to figure out where to spend this money and make sure that it has a good purpose. It's going to take a couple of years, 2-3 years for our kids to catch up, and we don't want to spend all of those dollars too quickly. We want to spend it wisely and make sure we do it right and take the time to do it right.
Question.
These are our students.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you said what the origin of these numbers are on this slide. Would you repeat that, please?
So these are the test scores, our reading fast bridge data. This was reading, pre-K through grade 11.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh. This is math, and it is pre-K through 8th grade. So again, the blue is at grade level, and the red is below grade level. When we discussed time, one of the very obvious things that came out in the discussion is everybody wanted the 15 minutes back in the day when we talked to the principal, that we took out so that the teachers could do that collaborating and phone calling the parents. That time can come back in and perhaps give us a little bit more intervention time. And we're also exploring and having conversations about where there might be other ways to pick up time. KJ mentioned the nurses, but one of the huge pieces that we're looking at are people and the staffing needs. We already have the nurse assistants, the after-school program. He's hired another person in the personnel office, so those are already positions that we've added this year that we feel pretty strongly that we'd like to continue with the next round of funding and carry those on to the next year or two. In the Office of Instruction, the link grant is going away. You'll hear us in a slide later that we're looking at a virtual option. We feel pretty strongly we'd like to keep Nick around as a technology assistant for instruction. So that is something that could help be funded by the ESSER dollars. In addition to that, new things that we've been talking about with the principal, intervention pairs to help provide that service and have our groups be smaller, and also be able to be very specific about what students need and how we're doing that with students. We're looking at a wellness specialist position, and you'll see when we talk about navigating next that that is a focus for the State Department. And then we're also looking at, do we need additional counselors or social workers to help with the social and emotional needs? Strategies and technology, KJ touched on this as well, some of the things that we started this year that we feel has really paid huge dividends and we'd like to continue for the next couple of years. Current talking points when we get together in our groups, summer opportunities. Originally, we had talked opted out the KRR or the Engage program to be a 2-week summer program. We'd like to go ahead and make that a 4-week summer program. We're also talking about the possibility of some kind of a summer reading challenge with the My On Reader program, something that will get kids reading more. In core instruction, getting on that rigor that is a board goal, we are having conversations with the folks from the New Teacher Project and bringing them back to look at possibly time with principals, kind of a PLC for principals, if you will. They offer a summer boot camp where the teachers actually work with the kids and with the New Teacher Project folks to talk about what does a grade level assignment look like, what do our kids need, and how do we evaluate whether this was a quality lesson. Our secondary folks are looking at the Marzano proficiency-based recovery program. I did leave that on the table for you folks to take a look at what they're doing. This is a standards-based approach to really identify and again drill down what kids are actually missing. So they may not need to repeat the whole class if they fail the class. There may be 2 or 3 standards in that class that they haven't been able to master. So we can focus in specifically on that standard, and then there's a way to tell whether they've mastered those standards. And then the last thing is looking at a pre-algebra class for the 9th grade students that are behind in math. Additional talking points include what we can do in professional development. So continue a lot of what we're doing, but again, I have on there the monthly support for principals, training grade level and lead teachers in instructional strategies, being able to have that deep data dive so we exactly know. So it's not just reading intervention, is it phonics-based or is it comprehension? What specific strategy does a student need instead of just saying everybody gets a reading class, an additional reading class? Instructional coaches working on walkthroughs and coaching and CLCs, so that we're actually, again, working with those teachers on what is a strong lesson, what is a quality assignment. Kind of one of my studies, as I said, one of the things would probably be good would be to clean out the file cabinets in a lot of the schools, because I know when I was a teacher, I saved everything. So we don't want to use those assignments that are 20 years old or maybe a word search from 5 years ago. We want to use our quality assignments that we have that goes with our curriculum. Also on your table, you have a navigating next document, just so that you can perhaps see it better and perhaps follow along this next part of the presentation. We'll go through each of these areas. We're going to let Keith start us off.
So one of the recommendations in the navigating next document is to have your staff vaccinated. Just like to take this opportunity to give a huge shout out to Colleen Drees and her staff at the King County Health Department. On the 18th and 19th of last month, we were able to coordinate with them to have over 800 educators in our community vaccinated. USD-457 was a happy recipient of 575 of our employees to receive those vaccinations. Also would like to give a big shout out to Michelle Scholl and our nursing staff. This coordination probably wouldn't have went as smoothly, but our nurses went down and helped, and so did Michelle, helped administer those vaccines. I know from myself personally and talking to others who were a part of that throughout those 2 days, it went off without a hitch. Very well done, very well organized. So just real big thank you to them. It worked out great. Maybe the timing was late in some people's perspective because we've been hearing about other places in surrounding areas having their educators vaccinated before us. But we were able to do it, butted up next to a weekend, which helped ensure that we were able to continue to have school as normal as possible. And then also, if you fast forward, second vaccinations should be administered anywhere from 28 to 32 days, and that will work out to be our 2 days of spring break this year. So, which leads me to the next bullet point. Second vaccinations will happen. Again, the pre-planning and coordination to do the first vaccines, our employees will follow that same schedule
over the course of those 2 days to receive their second shot if they choose to do so. And then after that, we've outlined guidelines for them if they are going to be out of town or miss their opportunity to do it on those 2 spring break days. They still will be eligible to receive that shot, but they would just make arrangements themselves to schedule that appointment through Finney County Health. So we were super pleased with the way that went in this last month.
And the second part of the fiscal and operational management piece, is to basically have a plan for how we're gonna spend these dollars. And we've talked about it before, we're gonna bring you a plan, but when we think about this, we think about it in 3 buckets again. The first one being we wanna take advantage of the opportunity to, spend some of those dollars, maybe carve those off the top, so to speak, and speed up our process for upgrading our HVAC systems and address the indoor air quality, and make that as good as we can as quickly as possible. Glenda touched on the COVID-related positions, and these would be anything from positions we already have to positions that we'd like to add to the wellness position, maybe some additional counselors if we determine that that's the best place to use some of those resources. But the bulk of those dollars will ultimately go to instructional programs to best get all students on grade level. And so that will take some time to figure out where we are, if that's the situation, where our students are, and what the best way is to get them to that next level where they need to be. And so that is where the bulk of most of those dollars is going to go after we take off the other 2 buckets.
Under communication and engagement with families, the state encourages us to remain engaged with our students. We did just finish this morning a survey for parents to tell us what they were thinking about a possible virtual option next year. And while that will be a whole separate presentation down the road, I will tell you that we had 1,760 responses, with 40% of those saying yes, they would like a virtual option next year. So I was very pleased with the amount of responses that we had, and it was pretty well divided over all 3 levels, so that was also a good thing. And we did use the Remind app to get that out to all parents, so another tool that has been very, very beneficial. They encourage parent-teacher conferences, which we just did, and with the change in the negotiated agreement this year, our teachers have some flexibility to continue to work on those parent contacts through the remainder of the school year. Is there anything with that, Keith, that I'm not saying right? Okay. The other thing that we're looking at is, for us, our district, is transition activities. So what does it look like for a preschooler to transition to kindergarten from Garfield, or 4th grade to intermediate, 6th to middle, those types of things? So we're now exploring possible evening activities where parents can visit in small groups, virtual options where we make videos and show the school, things like that that will be able to kind of showcase and make parents feel welcome, our students feel welcome, and at ease when we make those transitions after this year. The next section on the Navigating Next document is assessing student learning. This list is currently what we have to assess where our kids are at. So I did show you the fast first data, but we have lots of pieces to put together to see how our kids are functioning in the classroom, and are they where we want them to be. Academic delivery and support. I heard Dr. Watson present this document, and he was very adamant that we do everything we can for the kids that are closest to leaving us and going out into the world of work, or the college world in some capacity, because they are the ones that missed a chunk last year of their junior year, and now we need to make sure that they have the things to go forward. I think our high school is working very, very hard in this capacity with all of their counselors and their staff. I visit with Mr. Norby frequently, and they are really working hard. I also left you an article on your table of some kudos to Jenny Hand. I know she spoke earlier, but there was also a case article on how well we are doing for post-secondary success and getting college career classes for our kids that don't cost them anything. So I think we're really trying to work hard on that. The other thing was design extended learning opportunities, and I mentioned earlier that we are working on what kinds of things we can do in the summer. I also know that KH is looking at an after-school tutoring program to help. So again, extending that learning opportunity, but in a different way. And then I mentioned earlier also the new teacher project and perhaps looking at some opportunities with them. In the academic delivery and support area, to support incoming preschool, kindergarten, first grade students, we are hoping to offer a 2 or 3 day activity in the summer where students come in, they have different stations set up, so parents can take their students through these different activities, and in essence fill out that ASQ information, so that we have that in our participation rate. Hopefully then we'll go up on that as well. We could also pass out brochures, shot information, lots of things that incoming families will need to do, kind of school goodie bags, if you will. So we're looking at that right now. We actually have one of our students is in the KSU leadership class that's working on some additional activities for this. We've had videos made of all of our schools, a day in the life of kindergartner, so we can use those now with our preschool kids and show those over at Garfield, if this is what you want to be doing next year. Social emotional. There's a rubric that the state puts out that we have to fill out. Well, I guess we don't have to, but it looks good if we do, and we did. So, for our accreditation cycle, and the state then on the accountability, state accountability profile for our district then tells us how to do in that area. We filled out the social emotional rubric, and there are 4 levels: gold, silver, bronze, and copper. And we anticipate receiving the bronze level recognition. So we're doing a lot of good things, but one of the things that came up that we weren't doing is we weren't doing enough for staff social emotional. So that is why you see now in a couple of slides that we need to consider around the support position, more activities for our staff to support them as well. Some of the things we are doing, we do have the SABRE staff, have counselor groups based on the SABRE status. We continue to utilize the social emotional advisory group. They're currently looking at our data, Josh leading that group. We have now a trauma responsive team that has been trained. There's 5 of them that have been trained, and they have now come back to train everybody else in the district, anybody that wants zones of regulation training, for example, in their building. We now have the local experts, if you will. The partner with Compass Mental Health Center is one of the things that you will see if you read the Navigating Next document, and we have had that MOU now for 2 years and anticipate doing it again next year. The first year we had 5 buildings, and this year we have offered it to all but 2 of our elementaries, and I hope that we can be 100% next year. And of course, you saw earlier, one of the other things we want to consider is we need to add more counselors and social workers for this level.
Linda,
Yes.
could you talk to us a little bit about that wellness support position, kind of what you're seeing with that? What your vision looks like, for what that position would look like?
Keith, do you have that job description available, Andy? I know Tracy Johnson is working on that and has submitted what she thinks might be a job description for that, and it encompasses the nurses, the special ed. Josh was involved in developing that, and then Tracy Johnson. So those 3 have developed that. I don't remember a lot of the particulars, but we'll see if he can find it.
Clint, I'll just jump in while he's looking for it. I really think that what we were trying to focus on there was trying to give support for our staff, knowing that this is a, really difficult time, there's lots of stress. You know, what can we do to help support our staff? Whether it be, making sure they know what resources are available to them, you know, making sure that they understand what benefits they have, and if there's something that, you know, they currently could be using, that they're maybe not using to help with their stress level. That was really one of the things that we were really trying to focus on, is just having that liaison that someone could go to, really to ask questions about, I'm really stressed about this, or I'm having these issues, what can I do to support, what can we do to support our employees through difficult times?
Yeah, KJ covered it really nicely. Help with wellness grants, collaborate with community health organizations, providing resources to our staff, monthly on-site visits, being out in the buildings, talking to staff members, checking in on their wellness, the things that they might need, just overall in general promoting good community health or community events that might support our staff in those ways are some of the things that we have been listed and talking about with job duties.
Is that something that was requested from teachers? Or staff, I should say? Our staff felt like we needed that?
I think it
I think in talking to our principals, and I'll let Heath jump in here too, but in talking to our principals, I think they saw the stress on the staff this year. Many of them, made goodie bags for their staff periodically, left notes on their cars, anything they could do to kind of boost staff morale, especially, on times when we were hybrid or not sure what, month we were going to be at. I know those times of uncertainty really weighed on our staff.
And just in addition to just self-care in general, Dana, is a need, you know, locally for sure, but nationally, with stress in teaching, different events through COVID, the pandemic, those kinds of things, have all been brought to the forefront. And so it's just another step to try to, promote self-care and wellness, but also as a retention or support for our staff to know that we're taking steps to take care of them in all kinds of situations.
And initially, I think, Tracy Johnson brought an idea to us a while back about, you know, we have a wellness plan, and we've had that for a number of years, and that's always kind of fallen on nutrition. I don't know exactly why it fell there, but she's done a nice job with managing that. But it's kind of something that doesn't get her full attention because it's not really her main job. And so we were looking for ways to maybe be able to put a little more emphasis on that. When COVID came along, it has kind of exacerbated the need to focus on that with staff. And so that's where the idea, and I should tell you too, the ideas that are here, none of these are set in stone. What we're trying to do tonight is paint you a picture of some of the things that we're looking at as we begin to consider what's gonna be the best ways to use these ESSER funds. And I think it's been mentioned a number of times, kind of three main buckets. And that is, you know, some of the physical infrastructure pieces that will probably be a small part of those ESSER dollars, but that are important to having safe and healthy environments going forward. There are some positions that have become critical as a result of COVID, but the vast majority of this is really gonna go to help and fill the gap with kids who are behind here as we come out of this from COVID, and both from an academic and a social emotional standpoint.
I guess with that, my question is, it seems like this is we're working with principals and leadership staff when we're trying to develop this. And my question is have we asked teachers, have we got teachers' input at any
Not yet.
level in terms of what their thoughts and what
Not-
they would, there's no doubt, I think that we know they have extra stress, but is this what they feel they need?
Right, and that's our next step. That's what's gonna happen over the next couple of months, is we're gonna be working with building leaders to have them work with teachers directly to find out, what does it really take to have every kid at grade level? What are things gonna need to look like in order for that to happen? And again, tonight, we're just trying to give you a 10,000-foot overview of this is what it could look like. You're hearing a lot out there in the national news that schools have all this money available and they aren't spending any of that money. Well, we have spent a little bit of that money, and we have an after-school program that's in process. We have a summer program that's already planned, and we're moving towards that. So we haven't spent all that initial money yet because we developed a plan to kind of spread that over a year. But there's a reason why those dollars were set up where we didn't have to spend it all until 2022, 2023, and ultimately, if ESSER 3 comes about, probably 2024. So we definitely will be engaging staff in what's the best way to help fill those gaps for kids.
Do you have a timeline set up for that? Because I feel like we were communicated in the fall that there'd be an opportunity for teachers to give some input on how they were doing and what they were needing, and it kind of got pushed back, is what I feel like. At one time it was communicated we'd have a survey or something go out to teachers, and it didn't really. So is there a timeline for what Dana was asking about, or?
So the ESSER money we've just learned about here relatively recently, and we're still hearing about what the requirements are from the state. I think, Jennifer, what you're maybe referring to is, we did ask teachers for some feedback about hybrid learning when we did back in, Glenn, do you remember when that was? Back in November or December?
November was hybrid and December was remote.
And we used a tool that's kind of a little more open-ended, and I'm not sure we really got the kind of feedback about what we were kind of truly looking at. We tried something new, and I'm not sure that it was as helpful about how hybrid learning had went as.
Was that something you saw as a board?
I don't know that we ever did, because we're struggling with how to get reports out of it. But that was, I think that's what we were talking about at that point, was we were be gathering feedback about how hybrid learning went.
And I get one's about money, but I feel like the money ties into what the teachers are needing or giving.
Yeah, I totally agree, our plan is to involve teachers in this conversation, but like I said, we're still getting direction from the state on what we're gonna have to do to actually apply for and get the dollars. And so we're just trying to, again, if you would think of it in 3 general areas, a small carve out for some of those facilities things, the pieces we've had to add as a result of COVID, mainly people, mainly positions, and then the vast majority of the rest of the dollars for what do we do to fill that gap, both academically and social emotionally, so that all kids can be at or above grade level. Is really what and so there will be conversations with teachers in individual buildings about what's the best way to get there.
And again, this is a review, in the context of the Kansas Education Action Plan, as I understand it, and so we're going through those different areas.
Right. Yeah, we're not asking you to approve anything. We're a ways away from being able to approve anything. We just want you to know we are doing something. As this stuff is coming out, we are taking that information in, and we are working on developing a plan.
I'm really interested to see how staff across the board would answer on wellness support, because, our staff give and give just by the nature of the education field. They give and give and give, and a lot of times I don't necessarily think anybody really understands what that impact has on themselves. So any kind of support that we could have for staff across the board, I think, is really important. So I'll be curious to see what they say they need.
In this pause, I also want to ask another quick question that has to do with social emotional in previous board meeting, we've heard about some training opportunities for teachers on emotional first aid. I think it was something like that, social emotional first aid.
Mental health first aid.
Mental health, excuse me, first aid, thank you. And I thought that was very interesting, and I guess I heard that as a first step to trying to address that in the classroom for the kids anyway, to sort of scaffold that up. The current discussion has to do more with staff, as I understand it.
Right. And we did bring a presenter in, I think in January, that was really geared around self-care for staff. And we kind of spent a portion of that day, and that was a suggestion that came from one of our meetings with the GCEA Executive Leadership Group. We are working towards those things, so.
Sorry to hijack your presentation, if you could please continue, guys.
No worries. So the last column on your navigating next document is learning environment consideration. The main takeaway from this one is that remote learning will not be an option for students next year. And that has mainly to do with the big difference between remote learning and virtual is going to be funding. And so if you want that information, I'm going to let KJ jump in. But they are encouraging districts to look at the potential for a virtual school for K-12. Notice that K-12 is not pre-K-12. The state is saying no to virtual pre-K programs. So what we have done, we started out with the parent survey that I mentioned earlier to see if there is interest. There is definitely parent interest in having a virtual option. So we are now working with our group of teachers that are currently teaching remote, Kathleen Mormon with her program, and we're looking at what will it take to turn our remote learning into a virtual program. And then that will be another presentation someday.
Can I ask a quick question? And this may be for the presentation someday. When you're talking about the virtual learning, are they going to be considering the hybrid, where they go part-time at all? Or is it going to be all or nothing?
I'm going to say that probably anything can be on the table in our discussions. I know the high school is really interested in a hybrid option of some kind. Twofold. One, we're seeing a lot of kids that are having success with some type of a remote option. I've had a parent actually call me and say, you know, my kid was always in trouble because he was one of those real active kids, always talking, always up out of his seat, and he's not in trouble this year. So there's that. There are kids that like it because they can move at their own pace and do it without the distractions of everything that's going on in their classroom. So some students really are thriving in that environment. So, and the opposite side of that is if we have a number of kids that do want to do some kind of a blended approach, then our class sizes will be lower at the on-site facility. So potentially allowing us to better attend to needs of those kids as well. So there could be a double benefit there. So I know that is one thing that we are exploring, particularly at the secondary level.
And just to be clear on words.
Yeah, I got them all mixed up.
So although nothing's off the table in those conversations, we're probably more likely to see the blended, where the student goes part of the day for maybe their core classes in a remote, and then they go to school for maybe their music classes or for their CTE classes. Whereas the way we've been using the word hybrid is probably more of an every other day thing. And again, that could possibly happen, but I think it's less likely that that's, Glenn, is that accurate?
Yes, sir.
Those are the words I need on my hand.
Yeah, if you don't use them every day, they all interchange, I get it.
But that's
So-
encouraging. Thank you for sharing that.
Well, and now we have to watch between remote and virtual, and we had that when we first started, and I always wanted to stay virtual, and I was actually talking remote, and now they're saying we can't have remote, so I can only talk virtual now, so, we'll keep switching back and forth and get there eventually.
Glenda, who's on first base?
Steve Hogan is on first base. JJ's on second.
There's one thing I wanted to specifically point out is that because we do have these things being spent, or deadlines of 2022 and 2023, and I'm just going to say, probably about 33 to 40% of the money being spent, maybe statewide, is probably appropriate versus having everything spent at this point, or nearly everything spent, with a supposed deadline of, say, June 30th by someone who thinks that everything should be spent by June 30th because they think the deadline is June 30th. With maybe KJ, does that sound about right? If somebody thinks the deadline's June 30th, means that?
I would say a couple things. Number one, we have until 2022 to spend it, and in a normal, like in this year, we were told about the money very early in the year, and we weren't able to spend it right away because we had to really take a look at what's the best way to spend these dollars. And the other thing about that is, if we go back to the audit report we received, I think at the last meeting, one of the things that, we got a note on was one of the things that they said was really out of our control. We have to spend the money before I can request the money on a reimbursement basis. So to say that only, 30% of the money has been drawn down, well, that's probably not too far out of line because it's maybe halfway through the year, but still have to wait till I've spent the money before I can ask for it. So I think that just given the fact that we weren't expected to spend it all in this first calendar year, and the fact that it's on a reimbursement basis, I would think that the percentages that have currently been drawn down seem very reasonable to me.
Plus, we're also wanting to spend the money thoughtfully and strategically over the course of 2-3 years, right?
Absolutely. We don't want to spend it just to spend it. We want to spend it on the appropriate things that we need to spend it on. And again, that takes time to figure out what are the needs of our kids and what are the best ways to meet those needs. And that doesn't happen overnight.
So certain senators from Lewisburg probably need to reread the federal bills, right?
Probably, and I'd be more than happy to help them with that.
The other question that I've got is just, in reality, what, if you were going to be trying to hire new social workers and counselors, in reality, what kind of tools are you going to be using in your toolbox? Because everybody's trying to do that. I mean, Southwest Kansas, Northwest Kansas, everybody that doesn't have trees and water and grass are trying to do that. So, I mean, I was in a 4-hour meeting on the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee, and everybody's talking about the lack of people, the lack of resources. What's going to make us stand out to get that done?
So I make.
We are 457 strong.
Yeah, but our human resources person before him was way better, I heard.
Yeah, I've heard something about that too. I really aspire to be like that person one day. I think that's a good question, Laura, and, honestly, we don't have the positions. Typically, we have a fairly high success rate in replacing counselors. So to have more positions available, that licensed social worker, they have masters in social work, they can fill the counseling positions that we have at our schools. And I would be pretty optimistic that we could fill those in different needs, especially now, just because again, we would open positions up that we would not normally have. And so, it would obviously depend on how many of those positions we were looking at. The timing would be a big aspect too. When we were able to set that plan in place. But, I think we could fill some of those positions.
So it's great to have an optimistic leader of our HR office. And I think we're probably better positioned to do recruiting this year. We've got a little more manpower in there, and I think they're diversifying their efforts, even though there's some challenges doing that in a COVID world. But I think I would tell you, the backup would be if we have dollars budgeted for positions, like we've had to do with some other positions, we may have to look at trying to contract for some of those services in different ways. We may have to work with groups like Compass to contract for time if we can't find people. If they don't have them, then we may have to look at other, outside resources, which would not be as good as having actual new people here, but having the dollars allocated would at least give us the possibility to explore some of those other options if we're not able to fund or find those positions, the people for those positions.
The only response I have to that is, obviously social emotional is so important. And I think we've really done a really good job of upping our efforts with the committee that meets with that. And I know we have some curriculum for that, but I feel like a lot of our efforts are responsive. And I feel like some of that needs to be more proactive, like curriculum-based in health or PE, where we're providing kids with techniques of how to do that, or more information on mental health. So I hope we would, I'm not opposed to this idea at all, but I hope we would also start to look at really putting it into our everyday, curriculum. Starting at a young age.
Can I jump in on that one? So with our newest curriculum, Second Chance, the CCC framework, that does allow for the core curriculum to address social emotional needs is blended in throughout the day. So that started just this year. The teachers were trained over the summer, and some of that training is still ongoing, particularly for the CCC framework. But we do now have that embedded into our day and our daily routine.
And it's probably gonna take a little while, because I think for some of our teachers, that's happened this year, and others, because of all the other things going on, that's probably something we're gonna have to support them and
Yeah,
kind of
and
regroup with.
I knew we had established a curriculum, and that's awesome. I just hope we continue along those lines, and it becomes just as much of going to a doctor to, annually to make sure your health, mental health becomes that just normalized, so.
Is that anything that's, implemented into our mentoring hours, especially at the secondary level? Or are they specifically, is that study hall, homework type stuff?
Linda, can you tackle that one?
I don't know if I was talking.
Yeah, it's built into the mentoring hour. The CCC framework lessons are built into that time at the secondary level.
I should have known that, I think. I can't remember it all.
But we got new curriculum for every level, right, Glenda? Or was it
Correct.
just the
Uh-huh.
okay.
Yes, and in addition to the district level curriculum, so the second step is elementary, the CCC framework for secondary. We also added the Too Good for Drugs that we partner with the police department on, and we brought that in. That's also offered at the middle schools. The elementary offer parts of that program, but it is offered in its entirety in the middle school and the high school, and also the intermediate schools. Every other year at the intermediate, so one year they get Too Good for Drugs, then there's another one. So,
And our counselors, in addition to classroom teachers being trained, our counselors at the elementary level also go into the classrooms and provide lessons, I think on a weekly basis. So there are steps in place.
lots of our schools have also adopted zones of regulation and are offering sensory rooms. And that is one of the things that has come up, I believe, in the committee. Josh mentioned it to me that any school that doesn't have a sensory room, maybe we need to look at interest dollars for that as well. A lot of them already have that, but others are still lacking.
Anything else?
I have a question, I think, for Dr. Carlin, and we're on a point of order me, because I'm not sure where to bring it up. I feel like this was our COVID report for the night, and it was mostly on the financials and what we're going to do over the next school year. I'm curious, especially since we had a community member come in, where we're at on setting our levels each week, and how are we, at what point are we gonna get back to level 1 or 2 this year? Because I feel like according to our plan that we set in place and the gating criteria presented to us, that it's not being followed at this point.
Okay.
And in my opinion, getting back to normal for kids, that it's safe, and that that's one of the best things for their social and emotional state.
So, is it okay to tackle that now? The CDC has released some guidance here in the last few weeks, and then the state released their Navigating Next, which we've shared a little bit of that with you guys. We're in the process of reconvening our groups that did our COVID plan, and we're looking at maybe recommending some changes to the operational levels based on the feedback from the CDC guidance, based on the feedback we're getting from KSDE, the Navigating Next, and that's coming from KDHE and their medical experts, and with our local health department. They are all still really recommending that we continue the mitigation procedures that we've been using throughout the year, but there may be ways that we can relax some of that, and so that's what we're going to be processing. And as a matter of fact, I visited with Laura about maybe at hopefully by our next meeting, which is supposed to be one of those short ones at 5 o'clock in the evening, that maybe we could report back on any recommended changes, because I don't think our next one is till the middle of April. So we are looking at those kind of things. I would remind, and I'll certainly visit with Mr. Weesey, but the gating criteria that we established, we've made it clear since the very beginning that doesn't spit out an answer, an automatic answer, that's a guideline that we use when we meet with the health department every week. And so although our numbers have been fantastic, and we're certainly happy as can be about that, the recommendation that we've been receiving still from the health department has been not to relax our mitigation steps, for fear that if the numbers start to climb, we could be back in a situation where we're having to look at hybrid or remote. And the biggest priority for me right now has been to do everything I can. That's been my priority all year long, to try to have as many face-to-face days of school as possible. And we want to do those as normally as possible, and we think there probably are some things that if the numbers continue to improve, that we could do a little bit differently going forward, that would make things a little more normal. But we also want to follow the guidance that comes from the experts. So I hope that answers your question.
It kind of does. I have concerns that we keep moving the goalposts and changing the rules, and that when at one time we're told, well, this is the criteria, so this is how we should follow it, and then the next time you hear that it's just a guidance, and there's lots of information out there showing both sides of it.
Sure.
There's states that have been completely closed up, and their numbers are comparable to the ones that have been opened up. So I just don't see the data that says one thing, the mask or the social distancing is keeping the numbers down. We don't know. It could have been the same. And I really think that Garden City's reached the point where it's gone through here. So I just think we need to open our eyes a little bit and look at all of the data and not just
Sure, and Jennifer, I apologize for any confusion, but I don't think you've heard me say that in terms of that gating criteria, that we're gonna follow that exactly, because
I know,
that's.
but then I'm not sure why we have it, if that's, it's just gonna the rules are gonna keep changing, so. I thought it should be brought up because I have community members concerned about it. So I think it's fair enough to use.
No, absolutely, I appreciate the question, but I hope I haven't misled you in any way on that.
Mark and then Dana.
Okay, I really appreciate the question and the response, particularly in light of community comment. There's a lot in there to think about, and the process that I understand the USD-457 has followed is, to me, has been highly successful, if I can put it in those terms, but certainly involving a lot of process of collaboration amongst the staffers, feedback from the schools, so I'm asking, based on your comments, Dr. Carlin, that they're part of this process of developing something to bring back at that next meeting is communicating in those schools and getting some feedback on their perspective, I guess.
Sure. And absolutely, and that's why it's gonna take a little time, because it will work through those committees that we used last summer, and it will ultimately go to our select vision group for an up or down recommendation, but nonetheless, it will then come to you for final approval.
Because part of what I know you've got to consider, there's so many facets there, but for example, even the wonderful effort that was reported on earlier, making available inoculation for the virus to teachers and staff, it was not every teacher and staff member electing to take that series of shots.
Sure.
And so, in fact, percentage-wise, I get the impression it's less than 50%.
I think that would be accurate, a little below 50.
And so there's, we hear talk about herd immunity concepts, and I know personally, I think, well, if there's a vaccination out there, that will greatly change the game in terms of what we can do in assuring a safe environment for our staff and our students. And I still think that's true, but not everybody's electing to take the shots, and it's not a criticism at all, it's just a part of the facts. And so that has to factor in too, in that safe environment. And then where do you, like we've talked about since the beginning, I think, where do you err on in the side of safety and being careful? And so I applaud the process. I understand the need to be nimble in responding to the new information that comes along, as well as the feedback from staff and other places. But I certainly look forward to the day when I'm not talking to a mask, and as I think we all are. So I appreciate the effort. As always, there's an anxiousness to move forward with a better environment. And so I just have to trust that those communications are going to work as well as they have in the past. That's a comment.
I just have a concern that,
I'm not sure Dana was next. I'll get back to you. Dana?
I just wanted to because what I'm hearing Jennifer say is that we've changed the way we're making that decision. So we never used the KSDE gating, we had our 4 points of what helped us decide what level we were gonna be on? Was it 4 or 5?
I think there's more than 4.
We haven't said it for a while, so it's not in the forefront of my brain.
5 or
but-
6.
So, my question then, just to follow up on what Jennifer, maybe you weren't asking this, I don't know, I'm just saying, I feel like she's saying how we're making that decision has changed. And I guess my question would be, is that the case? Have we changed how we're making that decision? Because when you just gave us information, you were saying, well, the CDC is saying this, and So I wanna make sure we're still using that same method, or if we change that method, have we done the right process of changing that method? You know what I'm saying? Are the same people still meeting? Are you still meeting at the same time? And are you still looking at the 5 or 6 points, whatever it was, to make your decision?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
We still have the meeting with the health department and with 363 and the Catholic schools. We still utilize the data in the, what we defined in the gating criteria. And we also look at other data like our employee absences, our substitute fill rates. And all of those are showing very good information right now. We've had really an amazing, probably last 4 weeks, 3 to 4 weeks. But we also have been listening to the recommendations from the health department and what's coming out from the CDC and KSD saying, even though those numbers look good, you need to keep your mitigation steps in place. And that's why we want to go back and look at the plan and see if maybe we need to realign some of those a little bit. And because I agree with Jennifer, this has been a moving target. But we know a heck of a lot more now than we knew about this in June. We still don't have all the answers, but we do know more. And we do have a body of data and some experience in having dealt with it. So on one hand, yes, it is going to change because we know more, but Dana, we're following the same process and having the same people at the table when we make those decisions.
I just still feel like the rules are changing and we're not looking at situations in our district now where social distancing and masks aren't there, like sports and our fitness centers in the community and PE and recesses. We're not even looking at that. I think that's some data we need to look at too. Those aren't causing hot spots in our district where we're getting higher numbers in COVID and we have more treatments for it, and putting it back in committee when we already have a plan in place to change it, I feel like it's going backwards. We're not living up to our word, because in the beginning of this, we also were told that under 12 weren't gonna spread it, so they weren't gonna be in masks, and then suddenly that changed and we didn't even try that, so we don't know if that was an option either. I don't know why we have these plans if we're just gonna keep changing them or putting it back in committee, so we're gonna be set at level 3.5 or 4 till the end of the year. That's what's gonna come up, I think, is let's just keep it that way till the end of the year, and I don't think that's fair to the teachers or the students or the parents that have suffered from that side of it. So, I don't know. But I appreciate your explanation of why and how we're doing it.
And thanks for the question. It's a really
Thank
good
you, Laura.
question.
But you're looking at lessening some of the restrictions, that's why you're taking it back to the committee and you're looking at that.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Yeah, we're looking at, are we set up the best way we can be here, given the current recommendations that are out there?
So that takes us to, sorry, I lost my paper one. Housing updates, do we have someone from the city having,
Oh, they're on Zoom, okay.
Hi, so are you ready?
We are sorry to keep you waiting so long.
That's okay, thank you. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Carol Davidson. I am with the city. I am the Director of the Neighborhood and Development Services Department. Melissa, who is my senior planner here with the city, she is here as well. She's going to actually make the housing presentation. I am going to
actually be doing what Matt usually does. He was unable to make it tonight and gives his apologies, but, what we're doing is, we are getting ready to update or renew our RHID, Rural Housing Incentive District program for the 2021 year. And, as we do, as we have done in the past, we'd like to just give the school district and all the other taxing jurisdictions an update on where we're at, and kind of where we're going. So I appreciate, like I said, I appreciate your time. I also appreciate, and the city appreciates, your willingness to, be a part of this program, that does bring in housing into Garden City, and Pima County area. This year, this last year, we actually had a really good year. We had a lot of housing put in last year. We still, however, are short of our goals, and this is the best program that we have had to date to increase housing in this area. So I'll let Melissa talk about all the details in that. But I guess I will turn the time over to her right now, give her presentation, and then if you have any questions, you certainly can ask them along the way or at the end.
The Rural Housing Incentive District program, this is a program that we offer to developers who are building housing in areas that don't have infrastructure such as sewer, water, streets, that they pay privately to install these systems. Then through a tax rebate program, they're able to recoup the cost of those personal investment or private investments into our infrastructure. We do this on an annual renewal, and the way that we determine whether or not we are able to participate in this program is through a housing needs study that's done for our community housing assessment team report, which we call the chat. We come to you whenever we do an update. The last update we did on that was in 2019. And through that update, it stated that Garden City qualified due to the need of housing within our community, that over the next 10 years, we'll need a total 1,200 homes or housing units added to our area to meet the demand for housing. All part of that chat study as well is they break down the housing categories for price points that they predict that we need within our community as well. What that translates into then over the next 10 years is, on average, we need to add about 120 units of housing per year. And our housing, as Carol stated, we have had nearly 75 homes were built in Garden City last year. The 81% of those homes were built in our RHID areas, and while on average per year we need to add 22 owner-occupied units, and those should be over 200,000 here in Garden City. That's not a problem. When we come to talk about how much it costs to build homes in our area, in the 2020 year, the average valuation of new single-family home construction was $212,000. In 2018, that average valuation of a price home was $187,000. So every year with the cost of materials, the ability of laborers and of land, the cost of those homes here is higher price points in some areas throughout the state. The chart I'm going to show you now is 10 years, the number of housing units that we've completed here in Garden City. The program, our HIV program began, in 2012 and really kicked off in 2013, and that's where we had one of our greatest, spikes of housing. As you can see, in 2015, again, we had another high, number of units completed, and that's due in part to, the reserves at Prairie Ridge and Pioneer Trail, the duplexes and rental, units that we added at that time. Since 2016, of course, we've seen a trend of housing units being completed going up, and that is in due part to the availability of the RHID program and the ability for developers to build infrastructure and have available lots for our developers to build actual homes. So the chart that I just showed you was the certificates of occupancies that we issue per year. Every year, building permits are pulled. This is a 20-year, a chart that goes over 20 years of building permits here in Garden City. From 2000 to 2006, you can see we started off issuing around 50 to 60 permits. Then once you hit 2007, we saw a trend where we weren't issuing as many housing permits. And that lasted basically until we were able to provide the RHID program. And then since you see in 2012, 2013, we're now on an upswing and having the ability to offer land to be built into homes. So we see that uptick in permits being pulled to build housing. A majority of our housing is built in single-family homes, but we do have some multi-family, especially in the last couple of years, that have focused on duplex rental units or single-family attached housing as well. The Rural Housing Incentive District, we have approved 21 developments since 2012. We do have 7 of those developments that have completely built the predicted housing units that they added stock to our housing inventory. And then over the next couple of years, we anticipate 6 more of our housing developments finishing the predicted housing they intend to build. This is a visualization of where our RHIDs are located throughout the city. In gold, those are the areas in which all the predicted housing has been built. And then in blue, those are areas in which we have adopted development plans for intended housing. Those have been approved not only by the state, but by the governing bodies. Then in the pinky red color, those are areas that, it's a 3-step process for us essentially to approve an area of land to be, to utilize the RHID program. And so the areas in the pinky red are areas that the state has approved, and we are just waiting for developers to submit development and group plans to build housing within those areas. The areas in the teal color, we added 6 new areas in 2019 and are still waiting for those to get developed into housing as well. So one way that we anticipate housing development that is through the RHID program, because they have to provide how many houses they intend to build over a time period. We work with developers that use the RHID program, gives us a pretty good outlook on the number of units they intend to develop. We anticipate 5 new developments looking to seek for approval of the use of the RHID program. We added Pheasant Valley Third Edition because it's one of the few developments. They will not be applying for RHID at this time, but it's nice to know we've got that development coming online this year that we can add that to how we're going to meet our housing demand needs. Because of course, while the average is 120 per year, we still aren't meeting that demand each year. So it almost snowballs into the fact that if we aren't meeting the demand last year, then from that year to the next year, then we're almost playing catch up each year with that. So the anticipated housing developments, we anticipate that 196 units of housing will become available. I'll now go through those various developments and show you a little more in detail where those will be and what they'll be doing. Sunset Terrace Estates, this is located at the Highway 50 and South Towns Road, south of Sunset Memorial Gardens. They'll actually be developing this housing development in 2 phases, and the first phase is going to be Sunset Terrace Estates Phase 1. And they're going to be looking to build 55 units. This will be all single-family detached housing. In their second phase of development, there'll be 54 units of single-family detached housing. And again, they'll be extending all the infrastructure, including sewer, water, and electric out to this area, which will open up that eastern portion for future development as well. The next development that we anticipate coming for approval is the Northborough Second Edition Phases 1 and 2. This development is located north of the cemetery on 3rd Street. Northborough replat First Edition, where those duplexes you see up on North 3rd Street, that RHID development was approved in 2018, and just last year they finished building all the units of duplex housing there for that one. Northborough Second Edition, we anticipate through phases 1 and 2 to add 55 units of housing. This will be a mix of duplexes and single-family detached homes. Chapel Heights 4th Edition, this is one of our more popular destinations in town for housing. They do a lot of build-outs quite quickly with a lot of their development. They will be now moving into a 4th edition of this residential development, and that's located over on Mary Street and Jenny Barker Road on the east side of town. Chapel Heights 4th edition will include 49 additional lots for single-family detached homes. All of Chapel Heights residential development has been single-family detached homes. Looking to the future, they will do a total of, have the potential to build an additional 187 single-family homes once they build out the rest of that development. One of the newest developments that we have heard about is the Lost River Edition. This piece of land is actually annexed into the city nearly 26 years ago and has remained vacant. We've seen a lot of development surrounding it to the north and the east, and along with the single-family homes to the south. And this is located on North Campus Drive, just south of Prairie View Acres there. This will actually, development in total will have nearly 5 phases of development. And the first phase of development is going to be single-family lots. It'll be just north of Pioneer Road, and it'll connect Lost River Drive and Fleming Street to the north. And this will include 37 single-family lots, and that's the area highlighted there. That'll be the first area of development. Future phases of this development anticipates to have single-family housing, multi-family housing, and a commercial component on the northeast side of the development off of Campus Street. One of the last developments we wanted to make you aware of tonight is the Hawkeye development. This is a really great use of the RHID tool. This is one of, while we love it to extend infrastructure to area that doesn't have infrastructure currently on the outskirts of our city limits, this is kind of a infill development where North 9th Street between Emerson and Thompson was never built. And so as a redevelopment area, the developer can apply for RHID funds to go ahead and put that street in, and then they'll also be doing some sewer and water improvements as well. And again, that's located near Emerson Avenue and 9th Street. The developer will be going in and reconfiguring those lots to open up 11 lots for single-family detached homes. I'll now go over a little bit of kind of a quick snapshot of what this housing future development will look like in our anticipated units. So when we look at the 5 developments that we anticipate to be approved here in the next year, Sunset Terrace overall will be adding 109 units, and those will all be single family. Northborough Second Edition, will be 164 units, and that will be a mix of single-family and duplexes. Hawkeye Development will add 11 lots for residential development, and that will be single-family. Chapel Heights future phases will add another 236 total units of housing, again, all single-family. And then the Lost River Edition, will add nearly 400 plus units of housing, including single-family duplexes and multifamily. So over the next 10 years, that totals up to approximately 965 units. So we anticipate 96 units per year over the next 10 years being added to our housing stock to help us meet that need for housing, a goal of 120 homes per year. While we anticipate adding those new RHID areas, we still have many RHIDs throughout the communities that are still developing or building out. And so we've pulled some of the more recent and larger developments. Prairie View Acres, which is just going to be north of Lost River Edition, off of Prairie View Drive and Campus. That total development anticipates to have 250 total units of housing, including single-family duplexes or single-family attached homes. And on the west side of that development, we'll have multifamily apartments. Milestone Edition, like Hawkeye, was one of those great little infill developments. It's on North 3rd Street and Stone Street on the east side of 3rd Street. That development is going to be building 8 single-family homes, and he anticipates those in the $220,000 price range, upwards of $290,000. Sunflower Crossing, that's off of Spruce Street, east of the bypass, they will be adding 62 units of single-family housing. And then Columbus Edition on the west side off of Joe McGraw Street and Taylor is one of the developments we do have that addresses some of our workforce housing needs, and those will all be duplex rental and some homeowner duplex ownership in there as well. Hamptons 1 and 2, Hamptons Edition is north of Tractor Farm Supply behind Russell Child Development. They're looking to add 283 single-family units and duplex units. So when we think about how much housing we anticipate to have from the potential of upcoming RHIDs that we approve in this year, along with the existing already approved RHIDs, we're looking at nearly 1,792 units of housing being added to our community, and that averages out to about 179 units per year in the next 10 years. So we're really excited to get these new developments and the existing developments continuing to build out, because we will now reach that crescendo where our need for housing will be met with the RHID program. The numbers at the top just kind of give you totals of what we anticipate for the units to be added to our community. One of the important aspects that chat does talk about is the relationship between owner-occupied, so owned, personal home owned, and then rental housing. And their ideal mix that they put within the chat report is a 50-50. Right now, we anticipate that we will have a mix of 64% be owner units and 35.1% of those be rental units. And that wraps up my presentation for this evening. And again, if you have any questions, here's our contact information as well.
Any questions? Mark?
Just a quick question. Now, is there additional information on properties out in the county that you didn't present here tonight, or is this all the known developments, you know, within the stone's throw of Garden City as well?
So, we don't have any known developments out in the county at this time that have come through our office. Right now, these are the only developments that have come through our office that we've worked with developers that are in city limits and are going to be applying to use the Rural Housing Incentive District program.
Okay, that clarifies it, thank you. So there very easily could be additional developments out in the county that sort of help us with the housing and sort of add to this good news, if you will.
Definitely.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much, ladies. We appreciate your time and the information. Very exciting news and some promising information. I think this is probably the most promising housing update I've ever heard, so thank you so much.
Great, thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Moving along. Okay, board open discussion. Mark, would you like to start us off?
I would, but I don't have anything more other than what we've discussed. I really appreciate the earlier conversation on the continuing to look at the gating criteria and where we're headed with the COVID mitigation strategies, and so I appreciate that.
Janine?
I just wanted to say I appreciate the presentations this evening. We got a lot of great information, and I look forward to seeing what happens with some of those things and how we can keep improving all those. That's all I have.
Dana?
One of the things that was brought up tonight was some of the transition projects that are going on. And one of those things was videos for each of our schools on kindergarten readiness. So it's the day in the life of a kindergarten. And that project actually started with a collaboration with Head Start. And the district was willing to do that at least one of our schools for the Head Start kids. And so it just goes to show how much the district does for the community and how important collaborations are, because I think not only did it, help the Head Start program, but it also kind of moved that forward for the district as well. So I just appreciate those collaborations. I hope we keep doing that and building on those. And so I just wanted to highlight that little thing that I got to be a part of. So thanks.
Jennifer? Alex? I don't have anything. Dr. Carmen?
A couple of quick things. Actually, just one thing. At the February 1st meeting, the board had 3 students address you with some concerns about the music tour, the middle school music tour, and I just wanted to report back to you and let you know that I did follow up and look into that situation. I know the students and their parents were concerned that we were having sports activities, but we weren't allowing that activity to take place. In looking into that a little bit, there was a couple of differences. One is the music programs are at this point able to have concerts, and those probably parallel the sports activities. They have the same spectator limits, social distancing requirements, those kind of things that we do at the sporting activities. I think where the principals felt like they needed to not approve those activities was due to the fact that this would have basically created an assembly at the schools where the performances were happening, and we haven't been doing assemblies because of those same things. So those would have been the first assemblies of the year, and also field trips. And we haven't been doing field trips. And again, I know that it's unfortunate that we're needing to take those precautions, but I think the decisions they made were consistent with what we've been doing in other places. I did try to schedule appointments with all 3. One of the parents and students came to visit with me, and we had a great conversation. The other 2 chose not to meet with me, but I wanted you to know that I did make an attempt to follow up and hear their concerns firsthand and kind of let them know what I had discovered when I looked into that. And I hope our community understands that we really do value all that we do for kids. Our academics are important, and our activities are important, and that includes all activities. And I know KJ got some information for me about the investment that we make in our music programs and our sports, and the dollars the districts invest are very similar, if not maybe a little more to some of the specific music programs. And I shared with the family that came to see me, I was a musician when I was in school. I know that might be hard to believe, but I played the trumpet and I sang in the choir. And those were invaluable experiences in my growth and development, and I certainly think those things are every bit as important as everything else that we do. Some kids are sports kids and some kids are music kids. I was lucky enough to be in a school where you could actually do both, and I think we still have some kids that do both here as well. So, but I just wanted to let you know I did follow up, and I have communicated with all the kids and the parents that were involved.
Dr. Carlin, you and I spoke about this before those three girls came to this board meeting, and one of the things that you had answered with one of my questions was about traveling teachers as well, and that teachers are limited to how many schools that they can travel to. Can you maybe give some, do you remember that part of our conversation?
Yeah. So one of the mitigation steps that we've taken at level 4 in our plan, we only allow, or unless it's an emergency situation, we only have staff members, and that includes my team when we go visit schools, travel to their home school plus 2 other schools in a day. And at level 3, we do their home school plus 3 other schools in a day. So we do have some limits regarding the number of schools that we have people visit at. But again, if one of the first things we're trying to do here is to minimize the cross contacts and the exposure to different people. And so having a group of 60 or 80 kids visit 5 different schools and interact with hundreds of kids potentially in each of those schools was just something that was a risk that seemed unwise to take. I will say too that the principal had met with the music teachers and had developed an alternative way to do the activity. Wasn't as ideal as being able to go there and do the normal performance, but they performed through Zoom and reached out to classrooms. They did that to classrooms individually, and they were able to conduct those events. Again, it may be possible when we get a little further down the road here that this kind of event could be scheduled before the year's over as well. An outdoor activity is something that would probably cover a lot of the concerns. But at the time, the weather probably wasn't conducive to an outdoor activity, especially what we got by the time we got to the middle of February. But if that's something that those groups want to look at doing in April or May, I think all the principals, and I did visit with both principals at the intermediate schools and both principals at the middle schools, and I think they would all be, open to looking at other ways that this could be accomplished. They just couldn't do it in the time frame that was the most desired. So.
Mark?
Just to follow on those comments, Dr. Carlin, I heard a little bit of discussion, maybe even of carrying over some activities, some of those co-curriculars into the summer. And I presume that our levels of activity would be projected into summer activities as well. I mean, you're going to continue that evaluation into the summer.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I think our plan when we shared that with you, the concept was it was for this year, so that would probably take us through June 30th. Was the premise that we were kind of following. And again, hopefully we know more by then, and maybe we are at a point we can relax restrictions. But
just a question on, it was even at the grade school level, I think, maybe just sort of speculation or a conversation, thinking outside the box. If the kids couldn't have performed as, to all the grandparents during the regular school year, it was just a question that came up, and so I didn't have an answer. So I appreciate your comments.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, for bringing that back up and letting us know what happened. The next meeting of the Board of Education will take place on Thursday, March 25th at 5 p.m. in the board meeting room at the Educational Support Center. We do need to go into executive session for matters relating to employer-employee negotiations, whether or not in consultation with a representative or representative of the body or agency. I believe Dr. Carlin is suggesting himself, KJ, and Keith being involved with that executive session for probably 45 minutes. Starting at 9:07. Or do we need some more time? You guys need a break?
Yeah, we use restroom breaks.
So 9:10?
9:10, 9:50.
I don't want to wait until 9:50. Or did you say 9:15?
No, 9:10 to 9:50. The
Okay.
time,
Okay.
maybe,
Sorry.
maybe you need a break.
Maybe I need a break. So starting at 9:10, okay. Is there a second, or is that a motion? Second?
So moved.
I'll second it. Any discussion?
Can we order a pizza?
I will.
Maybe not.
Sorry.
I'll withdraw that.
Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Opposed?
You doing 40 or 45?
45. We're gonna be meeting in here, so we're gonna kick you guys out.